Today we're going to be armoring up as we have a look at the Beast Kingdom Avengers Infinity War Egg Attack Action Iron Spider. The product code for this Spider-Man is EAA-060. Comes with 4 interchangeable hands, 4 interchangeable eyes, a replacement back armor, and of course 4 posable spider pincers. Now the packaging touts this as being 6 inches tall, but just to double check, we'll take the tape measure. Lo and behold, he's taller than 6 inches. If you look at the tape measure, he's actually standing at 7 inches in height. Normally during this time of review, I would already have the accessories laid out here and we would have a look at them, but there's really a lot to cover on this guy, both in his accessories and the figure in itself. So I'm going to look at the figure first. Then we'll look at all the multitude of stuff that comes included with the figure, because like I said, he does come with a lot. Now, he's under the Egg Attack Action banner from the folks over at Beast Kingdom, kind of primarily looking at the Egg Attack Action being, I'm guessing, by the size of his head. As you can see, not only is he a shorter, sort of squatter proportioned Spider-Man, but he's also grossly proportioned in the head, the much larger egg-shaped head versus the rather small body by comparison. I must admit, he looks phenomenal. Not only in sculpt, as stumpy as he may be, but also paint. Let me come clean with something, and I feel bad, so very bad admitting this. I never really liked the original Iron Spider-Man costume when I first saw it, but I have to admit it has grown on me since. And taking that and putting into the more cutesier, smaller proportion, I think works rather well for Spider-Man here. Not only do you have the base color being this very dark, almost borderline dark gray blue, but then also in addition to that, you've got the texturing happening here, which is almost like a mesh sort of texturing here that makes up the majority of his body. Yes, of course, he does still have the panel lining, which is really running rampant here across the body, as fittingly enough it should. He's got some raised, elevated panel lining running around his legs. Basically, all the armor placements that he had in the movie are captured here very exquisitely here in the Egg Attack Action Spider-Man. I specifically love the coloring that they use for the red. As best as I could describe it, it's almost like a cherry metallic red. It looks, like I said, exquisite on his head and anywhere in which it makes appearances on his body. The gold also is elevated much like the panel outlining, so you've got the gold running around the spider emblem, around the shoulders, and areas, of course, around his spider web shooters, which we will look at all in a second. He's got the lower section also featured for his belt, which almost looking at it, it looks like this should be a section where it would be posable, but in fact it's not. The gap runs underneath it, where you've got the secondary ball joint, and then you've got the upper ball joint there. But we're going to talk about all the posability on this guy in a second, because I really, again, I want to spend as much time and efforts as I can to really get a good look at this guy. He really is phenomenal. We can tip the torso back ever so slightly. That way we get a full capture there of what the spider emblem will look like. Again, fantastic gold against the backdrop of this really nice dark blue. Everything works extremely well. Paint is very clean on Spider-Man. I don't see any imperfections whatsoever. I do see like a bit of the problem where like his head, let me just see if I can move it up here a bit. His head, I think, sits too far into the neck area, ultimately leaving this big gap. If you bring the neck down, it does make Spider-Man's head look always like it's pointing down. You have to do a little bit of just adjusting to get the head and the neck kind of separated from one another. But again, otherwise that looks fantastic for a figure. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about his posability, and then we'll look at all the stuff that's going to fill in this blank area, blank space right here. Okay, so his neck is, he's got a ball joint in his head. So like the head hinges up and down. You can rock it back and forth, and you can rotate it. But again, I find a lot of the times, if I can get it off of it's a very large ball joint. At the very least, if I can just move that slightly on its own. I do notice that, again, you get this big gap that starts forming here. So essentially what he does have, though, is he has the ball joint in the socket area of the head, which actually, I think of the two ball joints, is the tighter of the two. And that's why when I'm moving the head so much, the neck ultimately wants to go along with it. And you've got the very visible ball joint happening right there as well. Ball joint in the base, ball joint in the neck, ball joint sitting in the socket area of the head. So the head rotates back and forth. And again, you've got the ball joint happening in the neck. But again, I find that the socket is a little too tight on the head, that the neck often at times just really wants to go along for the ride. So you may want to, I don't know if again that's going to be across the board, but I do notice it a bit there. Shoulders are actually really impressive because you've got a ball joint or a hinge joint. Let me just show you here, happening in the shoulders. See, there's that pin, runs right through, and it connects to just a straight hinge. But then the hinge is connected to the ball joint. The ball joint is connected to the socket joint. And there's the socket joint there for the shoulders. So ultimately what that means is not only do you have the hinge back and forth, but you can also rotate the arms all the way around. And then they've also got it where you can pull the arms out slightly. That's why this socket looks like it actually can be retracted or extended. And you can see that it moves in and out of the torso area here. The bicep swivels, you have a double hinge on the elbow. There's one, there's two hinges. And then also you have a rotation in the hands. Ball joint happening in the upper torso, ball joint happening in the lower torso. Then you've got ball joint legs, a considerable hinge. Although he doesn't have the means to, if you want to get like really dynamic with his poses, he doesn't really have a display stand in which, you know, if they had devised a way to, if they had given maybe just a waist clip or something like that, then again you could have had Spider-Man in, you know, some dynamic poses. Ultimately, unless you have something to supply to the base or to standing Spider-Man, you really can't pull off this pose. A lot of times you may just want to be having him standing. He does balance fairly well. I mean, the weight of his head and the fact that his head is as big as it is, at times it does make for the figure a little bit, not off, I don't want to say top heavy because his head really isn't all overly heavy, but just off balanced. There's a lot of weight, or I guess size, more up the top here that it kind of throws his balance off a little bit. Double hinge on the knee happening there. And as for his foot has a ball joint. You can rock that back and forth, hinge it up and down, and then he's also got himself a hinge in the foot. So in a nutshell, there is Spider-Man. There's Spider-Man with his posability. Now, let's talk accessories. Well, he definitely has a lot of accessories. Why don't we start first with his eyes. Spider-Man does have movable, interchangeable eyes. It's simply just a case of popping these off. They're very easy to remove. Magnets on the back side allows for a instant and satisfying snap into place, and then you can remove the eyes extremely easy. So these are the defaulted eyes when you get them out of packaging. Then he has a series, if I just put him down here for a second, he has a series of kind of interchangeable eyes of different expressions. Say, for example, he's got some slit eyes. He does have even smaller of a slit eyes, which actually these eyes look a little more on the sadder side, I'm afraid. And then he's got these eyes, which almost kind of make it look like he's laughing underneath his mask. Now, there's mileage really for all of these, so you don't have to necessarily have them as the exact same eye on both sides, carrying the same expression. You could really just mix and match them to your heart's content. So we go ahead and we put in like those. Again, it kind of looks like he's laughing underneath it, or at the very least, sporting a very large smile. You just simply can't see it underneath there. And again, we just pop the eyes out. And you can replace it with, again, the more closed slit eyes. Like that. And if you want to just mix and match these, let's go back to one of the defaulted eyes that we looked at before. You can get something kind of like this. And I really do like the options of being able to mix and match them like that. I may very well display this particular Spider-Man with the smaller eye on the one side, the larger eye on the other. Sometimes, though, when you are moving the figure, I've noticed that the eyes do pop out. But generally, other than that, they hold their placement very well. Just in case if you are moving his head, sometimes like the eye may pop out a bit. Okay, so then we go ahead and we look at the back here. Spider-Man does have a replaceable back. You will notice that I just dropped this. Hold on one second. Well, aside from noticing me dropping it, you will notice that the holes, there's 4 holes in the back of the Spider-Man torso plate here, versus the one that comes defaulted. Obviously, if you don't want to have them displayed with the pincer hands, pincer arms, you can keep this in place, and that way you're not going to see the holes all the time. A nice little small touch from Beast Kingdom. So we'll go ahead and take this off. Now I do find sometimes it's a little easier to kind of just help you with getting a screwdriver in there, just to kind of raise these and move it out of the way. There's 4 tabs. Oops, there's 4 tabs inside. And I'm certain, I've done this a handful of times, but I'm certain the more often you do it, it might be a lot easier. There you go. Just kind of get your screwdriver popped underneath there. And this then pops out. The eyes are magnet. Kind of hope that, or wished that this could have been a magnetized closure as well. I mean, very large, 4 very large pegs, very large 4 holes, means it's a little trickier to get that out all the time. Sometimes, again, you may just want to take a screwdriver, just pop that into place. Nice. It's obviously not going to go anywhere. And then we can go ahead and have a look at his arms. And just before we plug those all into place, just put Spider-Man here for a second. Each of the individual arms are hinged. So there's a hinge here, a hinge here, a hinge here. You know where this is going. A hinge here, and a hinge here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 hinges. I somehow added an extra one in there. Then you can go ahead and attach them. There's little peg holes again on the back. These can also swivel, so you can move those around as well. And they just very easily plot themselves, or peg themselves, I should say, into place. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. There we go. And lastly, there's 4. Now, I would have a struggle, I think, wanting to display Spider-Man here without his arms. As good as these arms are, I mean, I feel as if displaying him without it is almost just a true crime. It's a real crime displaying him without them. It looks really good. It does add a little bit of back weight, I will admit, to it. But again, you can rotate these. There's the hinges on the little knuckle joints of the arms. And again, like, you can really do a whole lot with these. You don't really have the proper means to balance him on it. Like I said, if you had maybe a waist clip stand, you could peg it around or clip it around his waist. You could kind of have Spider-Man kind of looking as if he's more levitating, or at the very least the support of his legs are holding him up. But an excellent touch. It was well managed, well handled from Beast Kingdom, the fact that you could swap the arms out, and the pincers out, I should say, and then you could also replace out the back plates, so you didn't necessarily always have to have holes showing on the back. Other things that come included with Spider-Man are a series of interchangeable hands. Let me go ahead and grab those now. Put the screwdriver to the side. Currently he's sporting closed fists. As you could probably imagine, though, he's going to come with web shooting hands. Comes with 2 of those, or a pair of those, rather. Comes with a pair of relaxed hands, or clinging hands, if you will. Each one of them also painted in with the web shooting trigger. And then he's got a series of hands, which may look, actually this one and this one are the mirror copies to the ones I currently have in the socket. One is specifically for holding the web. One is specifically for making a fist. Which then leads to the final accessory that come included with this guy. He comes with several different webs. And again, I just put Spider-Man down for a second. I keep wanting to pick him up and play with him, but hold off, hold off. He does come with a series of interchangeable, 3 to be exact, 3 different sort of webs. These ones are very similar, except one is just obviously a little bit shorter. They are made up of a translucent plastic. Mindful not to bend these too much, you may develop a little bit of a stress mark. Again, you've got the smaller version of that. And then you've got a version that looks like the web is shooting out, almost like a little web hand. Any one of these, go ahead and just look at the figure here. He's got these holes right there and right there. Just take your web, and it's a specific shape, so it can really only go one way, obviously out being the correct way. Take the half moon shape, plug it into place. Oops. Butterfingers today. Take the web, plug it into place, and it sits just like that. The fact that they've also sculpted and painted the end of it in gold to match that of the wrist at least makes it look seamless. It also means that you don't have to take the web and literally line it to a hole and kind of just push it in. I think snapping it on the underside of the wrist, I think, is a smarter route. And there is Spider-Man. Normally, I've kind of done this in different order here. Normally, I'd look at his posability. We've already looked at that. We looked at his accessories being last. Overall, I'm super impressed with what Beast Kingdom has done here with the Iron Spider. For fans of the Iron Spider costume from Avengers Infinity War, you may want to keep your spider senses on while you're walking through your comic book store and see if you can find this guy for yourself. He is, yes, available in comic book stores, and you can also order him online as well. He's cute, he's small, he's over proportioned in the sense that his head is, of course, larger than the rest of his body. He's everything I would want Spider-Man to be in a much cuter way. I love the interchangeable arms, the pincers, that is. He's got some great sculpting and great coloring, and he has so many different interchangeable options that really you can display him any which way that you want. I could have afforded to have maybe a display stand included with this guy, but for the most part he stands perfectly fine. You just probably can't get overly crazy with some of his poses, but that's where the posability in his arms and of course the spider pincers come into play. You can do a little bit of moving of those around and just display him exactly the way that you want. Again, a great looking figure from the folks over at Beast Kingdom. Today we were having a look at the Avengers Infinity War Egg Attack Action Iron Spider EAA-060. You guys want to check out some more Beast Kingdom goodies that I've done on this channel? There's a Beast Kingdom playlist designated just for that. Make sure as well you hit that little subscribe button down below, as many more videos will be coming your way. We're going to have a look at some other Beast Kingdom things as well, so stay tuned for those. As always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.